Hello everybody, this is Danny from Deep South Homestead on Porch Time today. I just want to spend a little bit of a time here talking to you about some of the comments that's been made on my last Porch Time. People are wanting to know specifics. And then this is kind of a hard one to deal with, so I'm going to take this opportunity. Just come in from working a little bit. I thought I'd sit down, and while this was on my mind, I thought I'd sit down and have this talk. There's a lot of speculation out there about what's coming, and I want to try to see if I can't maybe clarify some of this. And this has been a long time coming, and maybe talk about this subject just a little bit here. I'm going to start off by talking about Executive Order number 13603. There's a lot of speculation about this executive order. It deals with the National Defense Resource Preparedness Act. It's a lot of things in that that's a little bit disturbing. You know, am I here to tell you exactly what this executive order means? No, because I'm going to tell you something. I read the thing, and it's written in a lawyer's language, and unless you're a lawyer, yeah, there could be so many hidden things in that it's just unreal. You know, it's there's so many things in that could be taken a number of ways. I mean, it's like the Bible. I mean, you can make it say just about anything if you take it in certain ways, and this executive order it's no different. You know, in reading it, you know, this order covers so many things, from natural resources to farm equipment to food resources to, you know, all departments of the federal government, all things about the water. You know, there's a ton of things that this particular executive order could mean. And it's got a lot of people on pins and needles. Even me, I'm one of them. I don't actually know and understand what, I mean, they could make it say anything, I guess. The government can do basically what they want to do. But I'm going to tell y'all something. This executive order, a lot of people are saying, is basically, it was written to make a slave out of the United States citizen in the event of a natural emergency, and some of them say even in non-emergency situations. Well, you know, I don't actually know how far it would they could take it. I know this, that after talking to several people that, you know, in higher positions, that the government can basically do what it wants when it wants. I mean, that's the bottom line. Let me just be honest about it. And, you know, I'm not going to sit here with some kind of scare tactics and tell you that this particular executive order means any particular one thing. I think it's one of the things that each American citizen has to read these things and determine in their own mind what it means to them if something was to happen. Now, you know, I'm going to step out here even further than this, and I'm going to tell you that these executive orders are not really what bothers me that much. Now, they concern me, don't get me wrong, but they are not what bothers me more than anything else. What bothers me more than anything else that I'm finding out right now is the corporate takeover of the American farmland. Now, some of y'all picked up from what I told some people on my last Porch Time in the remarks. I told them, says, watch Big Ag. The agricultural department is where you need to be focused at right now, because there's an underhanded takeover that's taking place in this country right now of corporate companies that's actually taking over American farmland. And I can't y'all, I can't sit here and go into detail. I would have to sit here for hours and talk to y'all about some of this stuff. I mean, I have a good friend over at Tennessee Homestead, Rich. He's really up on a lot of this stuff too. I mean, he and I chit-chat back and forth every now and then, and you know, we talk about different things that's going on in our country and where we're going, what's going on, and I would encourage y'all to go over to Rich's channel and Tennessee Homestead and check him out, because he's probably going to give you a little bit more information on some of this stuff than I'm going to sit here and talk about, because I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not going to sit here and go into the in-depth that this guy does. I know and understand most everything he's talking about, and he's good at doing what he does. But me, I'm going to sit here and tell you that, do I agree with a lot of what he's saying? Yeah. I do, because I think he's spot on with some things. You know, I find it a little bit difficult to put some of these things into words, because so many of y'all are just crying out, wanting to know what to do, and you know, there's nothing greater that I'd want to do than to be able to give you the exact answer that you're looking for. But I don't personally think there's going to be any one particular answer for anything. I do think you need to watch the big agricultural industry. Start getting into that, watching the takeover of the seed companies, watching the takeover of the agriculture land in this country, because people, I'm going to be honest with you, it's really going to come down to one thing, and y'all are wanting to know. That one thing it's coming down to be, it's going to be about food. Because the bottom line is, human life cannot be sustained without food. And everybody's like, well, I'm all stocked up. I've got a year's worth. I've got this much worth. I've got that much worth. Well, let me tell you what. There's some laws that's been in place in this country for quite some time. These laws were even used during the Civil War time. It stated, should there be an event take place on homeland soil here, that the American government and military have the right, if they're around where you live at and they need food or they need water, they have the right to come in. They have the right to take your livestock. They have a right to go through your home. They have a right to take your food supply, to sustain these boys in the event that they're here in a military action. And that's why this executive order that we talked about in the beginning there, Executive Order 13603, why everybody's so up in arms about this thing, because they're saying that's what this executive order is. Well, this is just an amendment to one that actually, I think, was written in 1950, somewhere along there, which was actually an amend to one that was written a lot earlier. If you really start doing the historical study on this particular orders, and these are no different than when the Civil War was taking place. When the Civil War was taking place, when the militias went through certain areas, they had the right to confiscate whatever they needed to sustain the men that were fighting at that particular time. Now, can the government come in and take over your food supply? I'd say yeah, they probably could. And when I told y'all don't put all your eggs in one basket, that's what I'm talking about. Don't base all of your well-being on your food stock and your food storage, because that could be taken away by the government. Solutions. Everybody's looking for solutions. What do I do then? How will I survive if somebody takes my food? How will I survive if somebody comes in and takes my water? If they take everything that I've got? That's why y'all saw in some of my comments I made to different people, and these are people I thought that probably got it. That's the reason I make comments to these particular people, is permaculture. You need to start focusing on permaculture, because you see, the powers to be, if they were to come and they come to your place, 99% of the people that I know today, whenever they come into a particular place If let's say they was going to come to my place and they was going to take my food, well, they know what a canned jar of food looks like. They know what they know whatever they've seen sitting on a grocery store shelf, they know what that looks like. They come into your house and they see peaches laying on the countertop there. They see apples. They see peaches in the grocery store. They see apples in the grocery store. They see bananas in the grocery store. They see canned goods in the grocery store. They know what that is and they identify it as a food source and they take it. What you have to understand is permaculture is where the secrets is going to lie. You're going to want your food source to be an edible landscape. You're going to want stuff that is not easily recognizable to the human eye, to people who are used to going in and out of grocery stores. Because you see, these people, whenever they come into your place, if you have an edible landscape and you have stuff growing, if you have things going on in your landscape that is things that is not easily recognizable to the average human that sees stuff in the grocery store. Say for instance a fig tree. You don't know how many people has been to my homestead here who did not know what a fig was. I thought that was amazing, and then things like that's what's got me thinking. They've never eat a fig, they've never seen a fig, didn't know what it was, but if you had figs in an edible landscape, there's a food source that's hidden. Other particular things growing in a landscape, dandelions growing in your landscape. This is one of the things I see people, they're constantly poisoning their yards to get rid of dandelions and docks and all these kind of things because they don't want to see a weed growing in their yard. Well, I'm telling you what, that's an edible food source. Most people don't know what a turnip green or a rutabaga or anything like that growing out. If you just put it in a permaculture situation where it's just growing out wild, garlic or onions and things like this growing in an edible landscaping around your house, your property, just stuck off in the edge of the woods, a pecan tree, quince trees, different things like this, blackberries, raspberries, blueberries just stuck off in the landscape somewhere. These are all food sources that will sustain life that is not easily recognizable to the average human. Now, you wanted specifics. That's what I'm giving you here. Now, I'm not going to cover it all this time. I'm just going to sit here and tell you there's a lot of things like this. This is where I want y'all to start focusing on. It's good to have an extended length of food storage because then you can, you'll make it through it. And water, stuff like that. But now as far as putting all your eggs into one basket and saying, this is how my family will survive for a year or two should a natural disaster of some sort like EMP or something like that happen, you got to get that concept out of your mind. You got to start thinking more in a permaculture design because you see, my friends, the way the Native Americans lived here and the way our forefathers lived long before our life ever began, they had no electricity. They knew what it was to prepare and to have things hid away. I'll give you even an example in the Bible. Gideon, it says when the angels went looking for him, they found Gideon threshing wheat at the olive press. Funny thing about that is you don't thresh wheat in an olive press. You thresh wheat on the threshing floor. But Gideon had enough sense to know that in that day and time, the enemy had came into the land. They had taken over everything. They had confiscated all the food. Well, Gideon had somehow or other hidden and grown some wheat. And rather than threshing it at the threshing floor, Gideon was at the wine press because he knew at that particular time of the year there would be nobody at the wine press pressing wine because it wasn't time. So he was threshing his wheat there when the angel of the Lord found him and told him what it was that he was to be doing. So that's the kind of things I'm telling you. Even these hidden things are even in God's Word. Study the story of Gideon and how that they had taken over all the food. The enemy had come into the land during that time and had confiscated all the food during that particular era. The people were starving and doing without and being held hostage and all this kind of stuff. And only those that were surviving were those that had known the idea of permaculture. Because see, that's what Gideon had done. Gideon had learned the idea of permaculture. He learned how to grow wheat where it was unsuspecting to the human eye. Now, the day and age in which we live in, we don't have the benefits that people like Gideon had. Because see, in Gideon's day, you had to have a man actually out on foot on the ground looking for stuff like that. In the day and time that we live, we have drones, we have satellites, we have all this kind of stuff that can spy on everything we have. And you got to go a little bit deeper with permaculture than what they did back then. You've got to put it into your landscaping around on your property where it doesn't, where it just looks like you got to make it look like it's just a nice, beautiful yard scene, or some sort of growed up part of your property that looks like it's useless for anything. You got to pick the right stuff to grow in the right place. That's the reason I told you things like blackberries and raspberries and stuff like that, garlics and onions. If you put all those things in, figure out what plant grows underneath something else and can tolerate some shade, strawberries and different things like that growing low to the ground. Things that just makes it look like an overgrown patch of woods that's just not really any good for anything, but yet it's full of nutritional food for the person to help them get through a hard time. That's where I'm going with y'all. You see, because I think it's going to eventually come down to big ag is going to lose their foothold in this country, and corporations are going to come in and take over all the farmland, and they're going to actually farm everything with mechanized equipment. Because you see, there's new tractors out there now that's come out that don't even have a cab on them. They don't have a seat for a driver or anything like this. They're all remote controlled from an office somewhere with computers. They can plow 24 hours a day, nighttime, daytime. They don't need lights. You know, the only thing they need is someone there to reseed them and put new seeds and fertilize and stuff like that in them, and they can plow 1,000,000 acres without stopping. You know, they can just keep rolling, and that's the direction that our food supply is going in this country, and they can do it more economically than what we're able to do it today. And I don't know if y'all know it or not, but a lot of these seeds that these farmers are buying now, do you know that a 50-pound bag of seed for some of these farmers is costing as high as $500 and $600 a bag for seed to plant stuff like corn? And the only way some of these farmers are staying afloat is they either going to lose their property, or they have to sign on with big ag and these corporations, or they lose their farms because they're so deep in debt. And my friend, when the farming in America gets in trouble and falls into the hands of corporations, it's at that point that we've lost control of our food supply, and they control it then. And once they control the food supply, they control the population. And that's where I want y'all to pay attention to. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of in-depth. I said, now, Rich over at Tennessee Homestead, he'll probably go a little bit more in-depth than I am, because that's just not who I am at this particular point. Right now, I'm more interested in a little bit in other areas, but I do think he's got some valuable information. I'd ask y'all, please check him out. So I'm not going to elaborate much more today on Porch Time than that. I'm just going to I'm going to leave you with this little bit of information and let y'all start doing and looking up some of your own stuff, because people, I'm not going to spoon feed anybody. I'm going to sit here, I'm going to tell you what I know and the rate in which I think it's beneficial for you to use it. Because a lot of this is so deep and so in depth that the stuff that I've told you today, if you go in and start doing your research on it, it would take you months to get as deep as people like me and Rich and some of us others have gotten into it. You know, it goes a lot further than that. There's this issue, I'm not going to talk about it today, maybe we will another Porch Time, is this issue of Cern over in Switzerland and what it's doing, how it's opening up the protection from around our earth and allowing radiation from the sun to get in here, which is actually biblical in Revelations. You talk about how in Revelations it talks about how men will be scorched from the heat of the sun. These things are all biblical, people. And maybe another time I'll talk to you a little bit about Cern, which has been going on for quite some time, and it's running at full capacity right now. So, begin looking into these things, because those are going to be some of the directions I'm going to be going in the future. Trying to let y'all know just a little bit along as I go, because for me to sit here, like I said, and tell you and talk to you in depth would take hours on end. And I just don't have that kind of time, and you don't want to burn up that kind of data all at once. But think about the things I told you today, and do some research for yourself, and look into this and see if you don't think I'm telling you the truth. And we'll talk to y'all later. Thank you from Deep South Homestead.